for inviting me back. Today you've heard quite a lot about the reasons for doing psychedelic research, and you've also heard from Amanda and from Robin, and you've heard the interesting data that we've been generating, and from Ben, the potential clinical applications. So I thought what I would do is talk about this challenge we have, which relates to regulation, and how we can overcome that in order to properly fulfill the potential of all this research. Now, when I gave the title to the Breaking Convention, this is the title I gave, and I gave a question mark at the end of my title. Unfortunately, things have changed since then, and actually it is no longer a question mark, it is the truth. We really do need a new Enlightenment, because in the last couple of months, and listen up, you Americans, because you'll find this hard to believe, but the British government has, 4 weeks ago, put through, or is starting to put through Parliament, a bill which will ban every psychoactive substance unless exempt, and they don't tell us what the exemptions will be yet, not only now, but forevermore. So they want to ban every innovation and the use of every psychoactive substances that could ever be. And I have to say, I think this is the worst piece of legislation. Certainly in my lifetime, I think you've got to go back to the Act of Supremacy in 1559, when Elizabeth I banned Catholicism, to come up with an act that is so destructive to human innovation and belief and behaviour. And it's terrifying that this could happen in a so-called free country. And I'll come at the end of my talk to show you how we're trying to oppose this. But while we sit here and stand here and celebrate the fantastic developments we've made in the last 10 years in relation to psychedelics, we're faced with the possibility that the situation could get considerably worse. But I want to kick off with a little bit of the background to this public debate in terms of drugs in this country. This is a cartoon of me being sacked by the government in 2009, and it's really true in all ways, apart from the fact that I rarely wear a white coat, only for the media. The key discussion point here are the scales of justice. On the left-hand side here, beer and cigarettes. On the right-hand side, other substances that people sometimes prefer to take. And I was arguing, famously, on the Today programme, I was asked a question, "You're not seriously telling me that LSD is safer than alcohol?" And I said, "Well, of course it is." And at that point, and that was it. That was the beginning of the end, because one is not allowed to say that if one has any kind of role in that government, which was the Labour government. And I can tell you, the Labour government is even more spineless now than it was then, and it's basically acceding to the wishes of the Tories, who some of you may know are now in power, to ban the psychoactive substances under the Act. So we have a terrible situation where we have a right-wing party and a spineless party working together to destroy individual liberty. It's a very frightening situation, and I don't know what we can do about it, but maybe we have to move to more enlightened countries. I don't know. However, the good thing, things have moved in other countries, those enlightened countries, things have moved on since then. You see here, one of the other things I was saying was that cannabis should not be illegal, particularly its medical properties should be endorsed. And again, the British government didn't like it, but I now know that those comments I made about cannabis were right, because President Obama has now made it very clear that alcohol is more harmful than cannabis. And of course, he did this to prevent a wholesale war between the DEA and the pharmacists in the various states where it's legal. This is a remarkable statement. I think I'll challenge my American colleagues to prove me wrong, but I think that's probably the first time an American president has ever told the truth about drugs. Is that right? I don't know. Yes. Okay, there you go. You see, give him a lot of credit for that. And of course, America has led the world. And what's interesting about the American revolution in terms of cannabis is it's been driven by the states and by people who know that they have a right to have treatments or even recreational drugs that they want. And that's been hugely important. And as Amanda said, it's broken the American hegemony on the world control of drugs. The only downside of that is that that vacuum is maybe filled by Russia and China, which would be considerably worse. So we shouldn't celebrate too much, because the UN may be still as irrational as it has been, but it won't be being led irrationally by America anymore. So one of the challenges to us as scientists and to you as individuals in society is to try to make sense about what is a drug. And you'll be fascinated to know, actually I'm appalled to know that the UN conventions don't define what a drug is. British Misuse of Drugs Act doesn't define what a drug is. Basically, drugs are what politicians want them to be. And of course, who tells politicians what drugs are? Well, the drinks industry. So this is the way people think about drugs in our country. Say no to drugs, that way you'll have more time to drink. Of course, that is an American ad, but we are slaves to America. And the drinks industry spends certainly tens of millions a year, maybe hundreds of millions a year, persuading people that alcohol is a social lubricant, it's an entertainment, it's a way of washing down food. It's fun, but it's not a drug. And they're so successful that most people think it's not a drug. And if you, as we've done, ask the general public, is alcohol a drug? They'll say, no, of course it's not a drug. And you say, well, but you drink it to change the way you feel, don't you? And if you drink too much, you might fall over and you might have a hangover. How can it not be a drug? And they look at you as if you're stupid and they say, if it was a drug, it would be illegal. And of course, that is the defining characteristic of why most politicians decide what a drug is. If it's illegal, it's a drug, and if it's not. And we're going to get to this situation now where basically politicians will tell us that anything under the new act, anything that's legal isn't a drug. But they won't tell us what criteria they use. And that's great, because the drinks industry will do it for them. And some of you may know of this lady, lived not far from here, a great singer. And when she died, I think most of us assumed she died of a cocktail of drugs, interesting drugs perhaps, but strangely it turned out at the post-mortem that she had died of alcohol poisoning. But that wasn't reported widely at all. The opportunity to tell people that alcohol kills you, killed Amy, was missed. What's worse about her case, of course, is that she actually was an alcoholic who was cured. She was clean, or dry, as they say with alcoholics, for 6 weeks. There was criteria, the current government criteria for recovery. And it's obvious that they're not very good criteria because she died. And she died, like many people who were addicted to substances, because when she relapsed from a period of abstinence, she had lost tolerance, and the litre of vodka which she drank, which would not normally have killed her because she had lost tolerance, and there's a blood alcohol level. But this has kind of been washed or swept under the carpet. We do not want to tell the truth about alcohol because it gets in the way of the drinks industry's desire to make money. And we have to change that. And I haven't seen the film. Has anyone seen the Amy film? Does it mention her drinking?
It does, but it doesn't make it clear.
It doesn't make it clear she died of alcohol. Well, that you now know. And in fact, in Britain today, alcohol is the leading cause of death in men and between the ages of 15 and 50. 20% of all male deaths are due to alcohol. And the way many young women are drinking, it will be the leading cause of death in women under the age of 50 by the end of this decade. But we do nothing about it. We simply accept that this is the price we pay to have a free society where people can choose to drink as they will. And those alcohol data are a part of the reasons why alcohol turned out to be the most harmful drug when we did this most recent analysis using a multi-criteria decision process. And here you see the comparative harms of drugs in the UK. The blue bars are the harms of the drug to the user. The red bars are the harms of drugs to society. And alcohol's got the largest red bar because it's so prevalent, it's so widely used, and it's so damaging. It's responsible for at least half of all violent crime, probably 3/4 of all domestic violence, child sexual abuse. It costs $3.5 billion in terms of healthcare costs and about $6 billion in policing costs. This is an enormous social burden that we choose to ignore. You'll notice over here, psychedelic drugs, I think LSD and mushrooms are over there, and ecstasy as well. They have very, very low levels of social harm. But people don't talk about that. People always focus on the small, random, rare events with those drugs, as Ben mentioned in his talk. And my own view is the reason they do that is largely because there's such powerful lobbying by the drinks industry that politicians are terrified to do anything about alcohol. But they have to appear they're doing something about something. So they attack drugs like cannabis or ecstasy or psychedelics in order to pretend that they're being hard on drugs. And I think this is not only cowardly, it's dishonest, and we should challenge them. And one of the ways we could deal with this problem is we could replace alcohol. Alcohol is responsible for 4 million premature deaths a year. That's more than AIDS, tuberculosis, meningitis, and malaria put together. But there is no global health campaign funded by large American companies to deal with that. No, alcohol is ignored. In fact, alcohol will continue to be and will continue to grow. However, modern science, modern neuroscience, allows us to replace alcohol. We could, if people were interested, provide a safe alternative. Not only a drug that couldn't damage your liver and your heart and your brain, but could potentially have an antidote, so you could sober up and drive home safely and reduce your risks of road traffic accidents. I've written about this over the years in several articles. And the reason it doesn't happen is because no one knows whether such a substance would stay legal. In fact, we now know with this current bill in government, it would be illegal even in my mind. And the next bill will say, if you think about an illegal substance, you will go to prison, rather the same way as if you think about being an Islamist or a terrorist, you'll go to prison. So, we are going into a state now of mental oppression as well as oppression of science. This is an article that this magazine Science wrote about me last year. Now, it's interesting that there is no question mark there, and I did ask them to put a question mark, but I think the fact that they didn't was not only that they know better, but also that maybe they do know better, and maybe this is the problem. And the problem is that if you talk sense about drugs which change the brain, you are dangerous. And one of the things that we all have to do is ensure that the communication is much more balanced and sensible. Because what I want to do is reduce harms. I want to reduce danger. I don't want to increase it. But the media will always, or most, not all, but a large chunk of particularly the right-wing media, will twist everything to magnify the potential harms and minimize potential benefits. And here's an interesting example of the problems we've had in this country. So this is an MP, Jim Dobbin. Jim Dobbin died of alcohol poisoning he died last year. His post-mortem was in January this year. Now, Jim Dobbin was a microbiologist. He campaigned to try to reduce meningitis around the world. But he also attacked our research at every opportunity. He used parliamentary privilege to try to get our licenses revoked because of when we did the first psilocybin study and when we did the MDMA study. So he actually tried to stop science, even though he was a scientist, because he believed that illegal drugs should not be studied, because illegal drugs were illegal for a reason. And that's the kind of challenge we have. Someone who will die of alcohol poisoning, but yet deny the possibility of research to replace alcohol, so he might have lived. It's so perverse that it really does, it's worth thinking about. But that's the level of intellectual debate we have to do. This man could make the decision as to whether if he was still alive, whether the bill went through or not. He could also make the decision whether we went to war or not. You do worry a little about the intellectual rigour that politicians actually bring to debates. And then, of course, there's the media. This is a wonderful PhD, Alistair Forsyth, when he was working in the MRC Health Unit in Glasgow, went through every coroner's report in Scotland in the 1990s, identified every death in which a drug other than alcohol was associated, and then looked through every newspaper to see whether these deaths were reported. And he discovered there were 2,255 deaths in those 10 years, of which about 500 or so were reported in the newspaper. It's about 1 in 4. And then he asked the question, was there any bias in the reporting? Well, remarkably, only 1 of the 265 paracetamol deaths are reported. 1 in 72 of the morphine deaths. So these are people with paracetamol deaths would be suicides, and morphine deaths would probably be a mixture of suicides and accidental overdose for pain. When deaths were quite rare, like amphetamine deaths, 36, maybe half of those, a third of those actually were due to the amphetamine, then they got much more likely to be reported. Cocaine, though, 1 in 8. Heroin, there, 1 in 5. But the drug that always got reported was ecstasy. And the reason the general public and the politicians are so anti-ecstasy is because they believe, from what they read in the newspapers, this is a drug that is killing people. Every ecstasy death, although probably only, again, about a third of those were actually due to ecstasy, gets reported. So this is a media bias designed to scare people about ecstasy. And when you say, well, why don't you report those 265 paracetamol deaths? So you can see, 5 to 10 times more than died of ecstasy. These people say, well, they're not interesting because they're poor, depressed young women, whereas the ecstasy deaths are people having fun, and we've got to stop people having fun. But you'll also notice one fascinating thing about those data. In the whole decade of the 1990s, not a single death for a psychedelic. And that's probably true throughout the whole of the country. But that doesn't get reported at all. But it goes on, and it continues to go on. So again, with apologies to our American and foreign visitors, that's not really English. That's the Sunglish. Legal teen drug ripped his scrotum off. Now, this is the supposed side effect of taking Mephedrone, methylcathinone. I was on the ACMD at that time. We wrote to them and said, this is a really important side effect, tell us the case. And they said, well, we can't really do that. We said, well, why not? We said, well, we don't know who it was. And we said, well, how do you know it's true? And they said, well, that doesn't matter, It's a great story, isn't it? Someone told us. The absurdity by which newspapers lie over drugs in order to appease their editors and possibly their readers is obscene. And the police also collude. I just got to tell you, it's one of the most surreal phone conversations in my life, because I was rung up by CNN and they said, where's Scunthorpe? Now, to an American, that's not funny. But it might be like, let me give you an example, you Americans here. It's like saying, where's Poughkeepsie? And they don't even know where Poughkeepsie is. So Scunthorpe is a small town in the north of England. And why was CNN ringing me? Because 2 days before, I'd done an interview on Mephedrone, and they didn't have my phone number. And I said, why do you want to go to Scunthorpe? And they said, oh, because the Humberside police have called an international press conference to tell the world that 2 young men have died from taking Mephedrone. And I said, well, that's close to impossible, because literally only a couple of weeks before I'd seen the Israeli data, which had suggested over the previous 3 years, about 400,000 Israelis had used Mephedrone regularly and none had died. And it's almost inconceivable that 2 men have died simultaneously on the same night taking Mephedrone in Scunthorpe. However, if you want to go there, you drive up the M1 for 5 hours and then turn right. I don't know if they ever made it, they never got back. But if they'd gone there, they'd have heard this. So you have a press conference, you have the CNN in Scunthorpe for the once and only time in the history of the world. And they hear this man's father, weeping as he urged youngsters to avoid the drug, Mephedrone. I don't want him to be labelled a druggie because he wasn't. He was just on a night out with friends enjoying himself, a normal, caring, hard-working lad. Now, every word in that red sentence is true, apart from one, and the one that's untrue is the one in bold. He was a druggie. Of course, he was an alcohol druggie. He was so drunk that night that he wandered into town, and he died with his friend, who was also very drunk, and they died because they took methadone, which is very toxic when you're drunk. Now, that didn't matter. The fact that the police thought they might have taken mephedrone was enough to get the drug banned. And this is something we see on a repeated, regular basis. And it's bizarre to live in a country where that is true, and that can happen. But that's the way the drug laws are so irrational, and so the policy is driven by politics, not science. And this was the most remarkable thing. 2 days later, they banned mephedrone. And the Home Secretary said, the unanimous recommendation to ban the drug, blah, 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 was based on painstaking evidence. And when you look at the evidence, you discover they didn't even bother to find out whether the drug had a pharmacology or a toxicology. They didn't even bother. They could have done it. They could have done that in the year that mephedrone was being used. They just couldn't be asked. Because actually, if you go and get evidence, then you might discover you're wrong. And this is truly the issue now, that evidence is irrelevant because these decisions are political. And what we have to do as a community, particularly the scientific community, is keep penning them back to the evidence, because hopefully eventually they will bow to it. Now, one of the most remarkable pieces of evidence around mephedrone was these data. So the pink line are deaths from cocaine, and the blue line are deaths from stimulants. And you see they go up and up and up until mephedrone enters the market, and then they fall. And mephedrone saved probably 40 cocaine deaths in the first year and about 60 in the second year, because people switched from rather rubbish cocaine, which is what we get in this country, to pure mephedrone. But mephedrone's safer. And this policy of substituting a safer drug for a less more harmful drug is, of course, a well-established principle in terms of harm reduction for treatments like heroin and maybe alcohol. But here you see it in the real world, the drug-using world. Why would you stop that? This is the most significant impact on cocaine that's ever been made, and it's been done by people being rational about what drug they use. And now they've banned the drug, you see deaths are rising. But what about psychedelics? Well, psychedelics similarly have changed the way people think about the world. And this wonderful description of Aldous Huxley, where he reprises the statement of William Blake that we see the world through a very limited chink in the cavern, is, we think, exactly what our research has shown. We think that the data we now have generated in terms of the imaging, brain imaging with psilocybin and LSD, shows us that the brain is constraining what we see. And if we liberate the reducing valve, as Huxley put it, by the use of psychedelics, people can see a bigger vista out of the cave in which they're in. And as Ben mentioned, there's a huge amount of interest in research around LSD when it first came out. And I did raise this question. Some of you, I repeat what Ben said because some of you weren't in the audience at the time. Would LSD have saved Amy Winehouse? Because this recent meta-analysis by Krebs and Johansson, I don't know, are you still in the audience? Yeah, great, okay. Shows that LSD was, and possibly one would say still is, if it was used, as effective a treatment for alcoholism as anything. And certainly, hopefully, would have been better than the no treatment that Amy had. And why was LSD banned? Well, LSD was banned largely because of the Vietnam War. And the key message is the right-hand black and white picture. Drop acid, not bombs. And that is you might say, as a scientist or as a peacemaker or as a member of the general public, that's a very sensible thing to do. But that didn't accord very well with the philosophy of the USA, nor Britain at the time. They preferred dropping bombs to people dropping acid. But they couldn't, under their own laws, get rid of LSD without showing it was harmful. So what did they do? Well, they did things even worse than what the Sun did over Mephedrone. They concocted the most wonderful scare stories. Girl gives birth to a frog. So absurd that you laugh, but of course absurdity doesn't matter as long as there's concern, and concern is defined by someone publishing this junk. That's enough under the US drug laws and under our drug laws to have a drug banned. And this is truly remarkable because the drug was banned in the face of opposition from the most powerful man in America at the time, Bobby Kennedy. He would have been president if they hadn't shot him. And he says, why, if the trials were worthwhile 6 months ago, why aren't they worthwhile now? We keep on going around and around. If I could get a flat answer about that, I'd be happy. Is there a misunderstanding about my question? I think perhaps we've lost sight of the fact that LSD can be very helpful in our society if used properly. I don't think that's why he was shot, but probably a lot of people wished he hadn't said that. And I would say to you, if this banning of drugs, particularly under the 1971 Psychotropics Convention, is the worst censorship of research in the history of the world. There's only one comparable similar level of censorship, and that was the banning of the telescope by the Catholic Church in 1616. And that ban lasted 150 years. The ban on psychedelic research has lasted 50 years. But the amount of research that has been missed in the last 50 years will be thousands of times greater than the amount of research missed by the ban on the telescope. So I think it is truly one of the most terrifying examples. Now, the ban of banning, the ban was overturned by the Enlightenment. Here you have some great scientists who challenged the Catholic Church's hegemony in terms of what we should know and what we should do. And Voltaire really sums it up rather well. This is Voltaire's description of the drug laws. Prejudices are what fools use for reason. You couldn't get a better definition of what we do at present. Because so many banned drugs have potentials as treatments. I don't need to go through them all, but they're vast. But the current regulations make them almost impossible to research. And what's interesting is, of course, if you talk to the Home Office or you talk to the FDA, they say, no, you can do it. And you say, how? And they say, do this. And you say, well, I can't afford that. And they say, tough, that's not our problem. So you can do it, but you can't. It's like Kafka, like being in the trial. Here's an example that Robin Harris put together. When psilocybin was identified by Hoffman, the structure was identified as a 5-HT-acting drug. There was a big rise in interest in research. Then it was made illegal. Research atrophied. And slowly it's coming back. But the depression study that Robin showed you the preliminary data on has taken 3 years to get to that point, and it's cost at least 10 times more than any comparable clinical trial with a legal drug. That's the kind of burden. If you want to learn more about it, you can read this piece that David King and I did in Nature Reviews Neuroscience, and if you can't afford that, you can get the free one from PLOS Biology, which came out in March. But this is truly outrageous. From a scientific perspective, it's disastrous. But we're fighting back. You've already heard about the Beckley Foundation from Amanda. I want to give thanks also to Wallacea for helping us crowdfund the LSD study, and to any of you in the audience who actually supported it. We will be giving you your fair returns, the rewards with the images, and have a conference on this in September. So thank you. But just to finish about the psychoactive substances bill. It is gobsmacking that a government could think you could ban everything that could ever be. Why are they doing this? Well, they're doing it because of nitrous oxide. They're doing it because young people are using nitrous oxide as a short-acting euphoriant. The Sun newspapers have attacked soccer players over touching nitrous oxide. They've invented this new word, hippie crack, for nitrous oxide, which is absurd because no self-respecting hippie would even use nitrous, and it ain't like crack. But that scares people. My God, it's hippies and crack. What? These are the two biggest threats. nitrous oxide, discovered about 1800 by our greatest ever chemist, Humphrey Davy, became president of the Royal Society. Used by him in 200 years, as far as we can ascertain, as long as people breathe air in between, there's been no deaths. Coleridge, Southey used it to get religious and visionary insights. Xanadu was probably a combination of nitrous and morphine. It's used by millions of women for childbirth. And Prince Harry was able to use it, and he's still able to fly helicopters, whatever he does. So the point is, nitrous doesn't kill, but it's the whipping book. Newspapers need something to attack, and there you have it. But beyond that, they've widened it out to head shops. In fact, this bill is about trying to close head shops, because people don't like head shops in the way they didn't used to like sex shops. There's no logic to it, but it's young people doing things that they don't do, and therefore they want to get it banned. And it's a lot of misinformation by this think tank, which is funded to a large extent or to a significant extent by very right-wing American charities. So this is driving through this most oppressive law. And they have systematically lied about the harms of legal highs. And I just want to quote this paraphrase of Disraeli: there are lies, damn lies, and legal high statistics. Because in fact, there are virtually no deaths in this country for legal highs. Almost all the drugs are illegal. In fact, we've got to a nice equilibrium now. The drugs which are harmful are illegal, and legal highs are killing very few people, largely because people who run head shops don't want their customers to die because they don't come back. So what's happening? Well, I just want to reflect on the fact that we now have the nasty party back. Here she is, the Home Secretary in 2003 said the Tory party will never get back into power unless we escape the image of being the nasty party. And now, as Home Secretary, she's saying, I will stop you having fun, even if it's harmless. So this is nastiness re-personified. So those of you whose parents voted for these people, you have yourself to blame because you should have stopped them. Because this is truly the nasty party taking control. And it won't just be in drugs. And in fact, what she really is saying, as a daughter of the church, she's actually saying, thou shalt have no other drug but me, which is alcohol. Those plants are cheese plants, not cannabis. What the Tories actually mean, this is the Bullingdon Club. Here are the great leading Tories, the current Prime Minister here. There's David. The proles are complaining we will ban nitrous. And here's Boris, who will be the next leader probably, who's saying, let them snort coke, it was good enough for us. And the truth is the Bullingdon Club was a club that was a very heavy drinking club, and the only reason they could drink as much as they did was because they used a lot of powerful stimulants to keep them awake, so they could drink. But this is the background to this bill. People who used drugs when they were young, able to stop using them, become politicians, and then now want to stop other people using things which are much safer than what they used. And that cannot be fair. And they even let Oakes, this man here, was our current Chancellor, they let him into the Bullingdon Club, even though he went to St Paul's and not Eton or Harrow. So, they're very liberal in those days. And I would say this is the worst law ever. It's immoral because it pushes people to use alcohol. It will increase harms through the black market. It's based on a lie about harms. It bans proven safe substances, and it's anti-scientific. And I've already mentioned that. So this is something someone sent me on Twitter just now, but I'll go at you. Let's just get it away. Let's well, we are protesting. I wanted to share two things with you. This is a letter in the Times last week, championing the cause of the opposition to this. And you won't probably ever in your life see a letter signed by Breaking Convention and the previous Archbishop of Canterbury in the same letter. So that tells you we have God on our side. And on this side, we have at least some of the top scientific institutions in the country. So we are protesting, but I suspect it will make no difference because we have a party in power with a majority. We have opposition that has no spine at all. And I suspect this act will go through and it will destroy innovation, it will destroy science, and it will criminalise a lot of young people who are doing things which are not worth criminalising. I'm just going to finish by just making sure that any scientists in the audience don't become complicit in this. This is a wonderful cartoon. This is how policies are made. This is Dilbert, there's Dogbert saying, I need 3 bitter and unsuccessful scientists and 100 lazy journalists. And Ratbert says, very good. And the next morning, Dilbert reads in the paper, did you know that toddlers thrive on pollution? And you can get scientists to say pretty much anything you like if you give them a grant. So you can get them to say ecstasy causes brain damage. Actually, he didn't even get a grant for that. And cannabis causes schizophrenia, he did. And LSD causes insanity, well, that's not even science. And the truth is, it goes on, and scientists must stand up. And I'm really grateful that we have managed to get some scientific bodies, for the first time in my life, to protest an impact on so-called illegal drugs. So I'm going to finish now. I'm going to say thanks to you all for listening. Remind you that Drug Science is my own little charity that tells the truth about drugs. And if you buy the book, I'll sign it, and a quid of it goes to the charity. Thanks very much.